Good halo.
Put that away, will you? I thought you were going to bring out your Amazon book sales statistics.
My one to three sales per month that it does, if that. I nearly said per year. It's about that sometimes.
I'm sure
Hey,
everyone was taking them from there. They were doing a roaring trade, weren't you, at the show?
I think I got rid of. I think I took about 45 books down with me, so I got rid of all of them. And a lot of them were to people who actually genuinely seemed interested in reading a book. Whereas, yeah, maybe 5 of them will actually get read. I don't know. It's a low number. One person has messaged me already to say that they've read it and they use it.
Nice.
So I'm just going to pre-warn you, the dog's going to bark in a minute because the car's just turned up. So
Did you send them an invoice of the book?
no, you know, it's so bad. They've actually been sitting in my office for about 2 years, those books. There goes the dog. But I'm going to pause for 1 second while I shut the door on him.
Yeah. We can cut this out anyway, can't we? We can edit this. I think that's what the pros do.
That's annoying.
Cut that bit out, yeah. We'll cut that bit
I knew
out.
that would happen straight away. Normally you'd cut that out, but we'll just leave that bit in
I
because
was just talking to myself, saying we can cut that out, can't we? That's what all the pros do, so it'll be fine.
that's what the pros do. But they're not real, are they? They edit them to make themselves look better, whereas we can make people raw and exactly. You see, say what you're thinking.
Yeah. No, best not.
But no, one person did come back and say they were reading the book and it was good and they use it, so that's enough for me.
Brilliant.
So
Nice.
happy with that.
What are we talking about today, Dick 2?
So what I thought we'd have a chat about today was inspired by a lovely petition that's been going around the last couple of weeks about very angry people wanting a new general election, not understanding how general elections work, and then now twisting it into we're just showing our dissatisfaction. Okay. And 2, I'm doing the Rory Sutherland Mad Masters course at the moment, and he talks a lot about perception and the kind of whether it's a perceptual problem, whether it is the thing you think it is, or whether it's something completely different. And it got me thinking about some of the work I'd done before, where I'd looked at. I think we might have spoken about this. One was where I looked at schools, and we measured noise and the impact of noise on the school. And it actually turned out that rural schools were affected more by noise than inner city schools, basically because the baseline is so much higher anyway, that almost like when you hear a siren or something go past, it's ignored. Yeah, but when you're in a rural society and you hear like fire engines or something, everything stops, everyone starts to look at it. And also there's that picture that does the rounds every so often, I think on Facebook or something, of the the fighters in World War II coming back with bullet holes in them and someone saying, well, that's where we need to strengthen, and someone saying, well, no, actually, these are the ones that have made it back. The ones that are shot in the other bits are the ones that aren't making it back, and that's where we need to strengthen. And it's quite easy sometimes to look at your data and to kind of put your own mindset to it and go, the data backs up exactly what I thought was going to be right, without actually looking at almost like the opposite of it. So 2 million people signing a petition is great, but it means 65 million haven't. And newspapers are great at doing headlines like 35% of Brits say this. And again, you go, okay, but 65% didn't.
It's 35% of maybe 100, 200 people rather than...
Yeah, rather than the whole population. And you get it with silly things, don't you? Like
the advert saying 67% of people said that 98% of people said this was successful. A snapshot study of context of like 10 people or something.
Yeah, it's those
it's that Ron Burgundy, isn't it? Like what was that comment? He said 50% of the time it works 100% of the time or something.
Yeah.
And he sits there and goes, "That doesn't make sense."
And none of it does. But people throw stats and use numbers all over the place, don't they? And Yeah, and TV complaints were always one that confused me. It was like they'd say something like, "Oh, 4 people complained about this TV show," and you're like, "But it was watched by 3.5 million." What are you doing as a job if you're sat there going? Surely you'd get to a point where you went, "Okay, if 10% of the audience complained, then we might have a problem with it." Not if Dave from Telford had a bit of a whinge that morning that he didn't like the show, but the other
Dave from Telford always has
3.14
a problem
million.
with certain things, doesn't
I don't like Dave from Telford. I
he? No.
just offended someone in Telford who's sat there
Yeah.
thinking it's about them.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, and but I think there's uh, an element of education and training that I think you need to kind of either go through or put yourself through when looking at your data and understanding and seeing what some of the outliers are and actually the
It's like
impact and flipping your hypothesis on its head sort of thing and going, what if we came at it from this angle? What does that tell us?
big word for 9:15. Hang on, let me just digest that. So yeah, I think it's not just looking at something and going, okay, fine, that's it. It's like, obviously there's certain metrics that are going to give you a clear indicator of what the current status is, but what you need to look at is what I say a lot is like, well, what's influenced that? It's the what, why, and how. It's not just that's the number. Okay, well, what made that happen? How can you either improve it or stop that problem happening again? Where do you need to look at to make changes? It's not just taking that number on face value and saying, okay, well, that's either really, really good or that's really, really crap. It's like you need to look at it in context with everything else. So, yes, having the ability to look at something and go, okay, that's telling me our performance is good, but what else do I need to know? So, is there something coming up on the underground that I don't know that is going to suddenly knock that? It's like retailers, isn't it? It's like you're going through, you're selling loads of stuff. At what point do you go, I'm going to run out of stock in a week if I don't? And that's going to cause me a far longer problem than looking at that number going, yeah, man, we're selling like 100% every single day. It's fantastic. Okay,
Yeah.
well, hang on a minute, because unless you know by comparison that shit, I've only got like a week's worth left, I need to deal with that. It's all great, and I'm like, but you know what I mean? It's like otherwise, then I'm going to have 3 months of problem because I'm going to have a massive PR issue. I'm going to have pissed off customers that can't get their stuff. So it's
Yeah.
like it's not over analyzing, but it's finding that balance to go. Okay, it's almost like for fear of getting a bit woo woo, and I'll probably just offend someone as well. It's the yin and the yang, isn't it? It's like what's the opposite of that so that I need to make sure is still accurate and correct to make sure that the headline one is right, to stays on track.
Yeah.
Yin and yang. Hypothesis
Mentioned
and yin and yang.
yin yang. Well, ironically, I've got a yin yang tattoo on my hip from when I was
Really?
18. And yeah, when tattoos weren't cool and it was frowned upon, I obviously went and got one. And then, like 5 years later, they became cool and everyone got them. And I've got annoyed
It's on your
because I've
it's on
got
your hip.
I've got a crap one on my hip from when I was 18.
Could have been called yin and wang.
Yeah, it's a local shop. Uh, what was I going to say? You just thrown me completely there. I was going to laugh because you mentioned ran out of stock, and I was thinking randomly. I was thinking about KFC because they ran out of chicken, didn't they,
Yeah, it
for
did.
quite a while, which caused people enormous trauma and
I
upset.
know.
But yeah, but I think I said I'm doing this Rory Sutherland Masters course at the moment, and he's obviously getting you to think about things differently and trains. And the example he gave yesterday was around lifts and people's perception of waiting for a lift. And they kind of came in and said the lifts take too long to arrive.
Mm.
And when they actually got into it and broke it down, it wasn't actually the length of time the lift took to arrive. It's that there were boards stood in the lobby. So they put mirrors up, and actually people were suddenly less bored because they pushed the button and then they checked themselves in the mirror, did the hair, touched up any makeup, did what they needed to do. And by the time they'd done that, the lift was there. And it was almost like they'd forgotten there was a delay in the lift coming.
Mm.
And it's I like his course because it is kind of human psychology and consumer psychology
He's
is what he
great.
talks about.
I watch a lot of his content, and he just has this unique view of the world. It's really really interesting. He just goes
Yeah,
through all the guff and all the marketing fluff and gets straight to the point as to
but
what they're really actually
his
doing.
yeah, but his point on that was almost like if you'd have asked an engineer, the lift engineer would have told you how to make the lift come quicker. If you'd have asked someone else, they'd have given you their answer because they were the data guy or the tech guy. If you'd have asked someone else, they'd have given you their answer because they're the reception person. And actually, you need to come at some of these things from a different angle and look at your data from a different angle. And that's why I mentioned the newspapers, because they're constantly throwing headlines of like 20% of Brits do this or 15% of men do this or whatever. And you're like, but that's the small percentage that you're trying to highlight as the normality. And you're almost forgetting, or it's a less interesting headline, isn't it? If it says 95% of men don't do this or that kind of approach. So, do you know what I mean? It's I don't know. I can't think of one that's come up recently, but they'd have something like 5% of men don't clean their teeth before bed or something, wouldn't they? But the opposite headline of 95% of men do clean their teeth before bed. Less interesting. No one's going to read that article. So it's perception and how you frame stuff and how you flip it. And like you said, yeah, and it's very easy to go in to look at your data with a mindset of we're doing well or we're profitable, we've got money in the bank. But actually, because you've already got that mindset before you're looking at the data is only going to kind of uphold your opinion of what's happening.
Bias.
Your bias, yes, definitely. That's a nice data word that people like to use. And I don't really have an answer as to exactly how you train yourself in it, but I think it's approaching your data with more open-mindedness and looking at everything and actually saying, okay, although our graph's going up nicely, there's a dot over here, and I need to understand why there's a dot over here and what's caused that, and actually is that something we should be looking at and investigating, because that might be a new sales stream for us that we've never even considered or thought about before, because we've always just focused on kind of like the general curve that's going through. You need to stop stroking your company badge as we talk.
It felt like one of the things. It felt like one of the things was coming off. It felt like one of the printing was coming off.
Just keep reminding people who you work for.
No, it definitely wasn't. It's not.
No.
It wasn't. I wasn't doing a Rory Sutherland advice and trying to draw people's attention.
Yeah.
I didn't do that. I just get that.
Probably, yeah, some proper psychology.
Yeah, that's called kind of in your face psychology, isn't it?
Yeah,
marketing.
The less subtle approach.
Bit like me in general, to be honest.
Yeah.
Well, it is storytelling, and something that I always say is like, yes, you have your standard reporting, you have your basic standard reports, regulatory reports quite often, but what is like you want to look at the exceptions as well. So you want to decide what is an exception and bring that to the people's attention that need to know about it. It's not just about throwing out profit is up, down, revenue is up, down. What does that mean? It's like, well, okay, well, if profit is up, but what are there any other outliers? Are there any other exceptions that I need to be made aware of that can cause that could cause an issue? Good or bad, bear in mind, good or bad. Is there something that's flagged up suddenly that you go, oh, I need to look at that it would normally pass you by because you're looking at the numbers going, okay, great, we've got this X number of output that is really, really good. We're hitting target. Could it be better? Or are we under target? What do we need to do? So then you find your exceptions and go, well, what's that telling me by way of exceptions? And what are these areas that I need to look at where we're not performing or we are performing, dependent. But you don't have to present absolutely everything, because then you're going in, on the opposite of bias, you're into the world of overwhelm where you're going, I've got too much going on now. I don't know where to look. So that's kind of like, so I'm not going to. And I look at the headline. So that's kind of the the other end of it. It's striking the balance on the message, but also the balance of what you're looking at, and being able to find that medium that is like, okay, and ask the question and go, okay, yes, we're hitting target, but could it be better? Could we be doing more? Are there anything we need to look at that's not brought to our attention? Is there anything there we need to focus on? And it's not just necessarily about reporting numbers, it's about reporting insight. And that's the other thing. It's not just numbers, it's insight. What's that actually mean?
Yeah.
What does that figure? You sell two, you give two proposals, you sell one, 50% conversion rate. Brilliant. What a hit rate. But you've only sold two.
Yeah.
Sorry, one, beg your pardon. So it's like, well, that's all right. If you're reporting on 50%, then it's fantastic. That's all right. I happily take that. But in reality, it's like, well, I only sold one though.
Yeah, 50% of 1,000 is quite good, but 50% of 10 is less good. So
what do you present? What do you show? That's the other thing as well that I've said. I think I've said in the past, maybe in a sales scenario, it's like somebody has a really high sales conversion, but their numbers actually, they get all the praise, they get all the adulation, win salesperson of the week award and things like this. But actually, on the when you look behind that, it's actually they're only doing a third of what everyone else is doing by way of output. So yes, they might seem high and they might be selling more than anybody else, but actually that could be because they're cherry picking. Operationally, there could be something that they're up to that is not brought to everyone else's attention. And then you've got this disconnect of what is actually happening in your headline. What does that mean behind it? What's that actually telling you?
Yeah, definitely. And the other bits he talked about, funny enough, are things I've done or talked about previously in local government. I was quite happy that I was on the same page as him on some of the things he came up with. So one of them was he was talking about checks, but I've done it with land charges and other bits where your average turnaround is like 8 days to do something. But if you tell the customer it takes 15 days and they get it in 8, they're overjoyed. If you tell them it's 8 and they get it in 12, they think you're rubbish. And so the perception bit of, yes, we can do it in 1 or 2, but if we tell people it takes longer and they get it sooner, they phone you up and say, thanks for doing it so quickly, sort of thing. And I've seen councils do that, where they go, our average speed of delivery is 8 days. And you're like, but if you're the one if that's average, then 50% of them are more than 8 days. So 50% of your customers are going to be annoyed with you before you've even started. And they're the ones that are going to be phoning in, chasing and causing kind of failure demand coming through your contact centre. And so I've always said to people, you need to, when you're looking at stats like that, you need to factor in what's the person at home who you're serving or selling to, what are they thinking? Because, someone says it will take 10 days, you're like, oh, that's a while. And that you might get a bit of a hump, but you're like, well, that's fair enough because that's what the company have told me it takes. And then it gets there the next day and you're genuinely like, that's amazing. But if they said next day delivery and it comes in 2 days, you're actually quite annoyed with them. And it happens all the time with stuff. And he also talked about call centres where ultimately if you're on hold for quite a while, it's almost like the company doesn't want to talk to you. But if you turned it round and said, you phoned in and the minute they said there's a queue, push 1 and we'll call you back as soon as we're free, and you can hang up and then they ring you back, they're then the ones phoning you, and there's a different perception that you are important, you're important enough to call them. And he said even things like that change people's kind of perception of your service. But again, we talk about call centre stats and when did we enter in the right number of rings, how many people are on hold, how many people rang off or let go, how many lost calls, all of that kind of stuff. And you kind of even look at that and go, well, actually, are we measuring the right stats? And then you and I think we talked in one of our earlier episodes where we said things like the weather can affect people's moods before they've even picked the phone up to phone you anyway, because it's a wet, miserable, grey Monday morning or something. They're not going to be the happiest person in the world phoning you up to talk about something. So you can kind of start to bring what you think is your perception and what you think is important almost as a call center manager and flip that on its head and go, what's important to the person ringing me? Is it that they get through immediately when they ring, or is it that at some point they're contacted and their problem's resolved? And which one of those things is the most important? And that's kind of why today's episode was almost like flipping things on its head and going, look at things from the other angle. View not just from you as your business, view it from your customers. What are they looking at when they see you? What your service is like? What you're doing? Are you making promises of speed that you can't keep? Or, I mean, the amount of courses, 10 times your business courses and all those that go on at the moment. And obviously it's like 1 in 100 actually hit the 10 times. But people are desperate. And I think you said at the exhibition, there was a lot of kind of like get rich quick things going on. Because people's perception is that's what they want, but ultimately you have to do a lot of hard work and a lot of things behind the scenes, and be one of the 100 that gets quite lucky, right place, right time to achieve that. So yeah, for me, I just think there needs to be. I don't know whether it's more education or more conversation, but it's taking data and interpreting it multiple ways and looking at the data from multiple mindsets and actually coming up with that opinion of what is the right thing. Because too many times I mean, my old council, they used to have a sickness report every month, and I tried to stop it because it took too long to pull together. It used to take the team ages to pull together. And I was like, we need to stop this because it just takes too long. And what's the ultimate aim of it? And it turned out it was a bit of a competition between the directors as to who had the least sick. And you're like, well, that's fine, but adult social care are probably going to lose that month on month just because the demands and the stresses of the job are entirely different to someone working in a transactional processing job. Do you know what I mean? But they used it. They were looking at it as if, so, you had 10 this month and I only had 5, so I'm better. And it was just a really weird scenario to be in, where it was almost like you're making the staff do this report that takes about nearly a week of someone's time to pull together, almost so you can have a bit of a finger pointing session at senior level. But again, there was no interpretation. It was literally just the raw numbers. It was, these are the numbers in my department that are sick, without any, like you said, there's no story around that. But there is obviously a story behind that, because different jobs are going to attract different sicknesses. Ones where you're more public facing, you're meeting more people who might turn up with coughs, colds, and things. You're more likely to catch them. It's all of those things in. So
I think it's well also to do with the silo mentality, isn't it? As well, it's like if you look at numbers in isolation, you only see one particular skew or again bias on those numbers.
yeah,
Whereas you got finance report finance numbers, marketing report marketing numbers, ops report ops numbers. To really get an overview of what that all means, you need to bring it together, and then that's where that is so important, because you look at things, and like you say, you look at things in operation. We've got a really, if your output is really is dropped, is that because, well, why is that? Is it because products aren't shifting, or is it because you've got a massive sickness rate?
yeah,
What is happening? And you're looking at it going, unless you look at that joined up, you don't necessarily see that straight away. But then that's the communication. Communication is the other piece that is lacking often in this world, where it's like, I need to produce my numbers and I don't give a shit about anything else. That's what I'm responsible for. And
yeah,
like, okay, yeah, all right, you're responsible for it, but you are responsible for it. But what does that mean? You're not just responsible for checking out numbers. You need someone to go, well, why is that? What caused that to happen? Is it a case that for 6 months you've been hitting target, but you had a high sickness rate? What does that tell you operationally? There's a big question mark around things, and that's not necessarily a positive look, in a way that, if you maybe don't need to have the hours worked that have worked, or the products that you are shifting, or you know what I mean? It's like if we're selling 100 products, we suddenly drop to 50 and our revenue goes up. Well, what does that tell you?
Yeah.
It's all these It's not just what it says. It comes out as a number. What's the context of that? What does that really
Yeah.
mean? What are the other bits that make up that number that over a period of time you can look at and go, right, I've now got information, I've got an insight that I can now make a decision on, not just go, oh, this is the number, oh great, or oh shit, what's happened?
Yeah. And with Hashiru and that, the concept when I kind of first started marketing it was, this is the story behind your numbers. So it was capture all of those decisions, discussions, designs, deliverables, all of that. Because when you are looking at that, all those numbers and going, haven't we done well this month? You've actually then got a database that says, well, actually, here's every decision we made this month. Let's match across and see what's actually had the impact. Why have we done what we've done? Because it's information that generally sits in people's heads, or I don't know, emails or Word documents or meeting minutes or something else that isn't then used again, and it's not looked at. So there is a double kind of approach to say, yes, we've got our numbers and yes, we know what they're doing, but actually there's the story behind all of that. This is what the business has been doing. This is where we're going and what decisions we've made that have had that impact on it. And I don't think there's enough focus really on that side of things to look at the story properly. If I said to you, Richard, you work for me and you're in sales and you have to hit 50% of your result, 50% of your target.
Low before I did that.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I'm awful to work for. But 50% you could hit that quite happily, but trundling along doing very little. So, I mean, 50% of a big number is much harder for you to get to. So, yeah, I think there just needs to be more. I don't know whether they need to start at school or whether they need to bring it in, do more statistics, more work on stuff like that, or just more. I'm going to say a phrase I hate: outside the box thinking when you're looking at your numbers. At least I didn't say blue sky. I did hear someone use boil. I did hear someone did use boil the ocean the other day in something. I nearly disappeared under my seat at that point. I was like, oh, that's one of the worst. I used to have a boss who used to come out. We used to play cliche bingo because we'd sit there and wait for him to reel them all off during a meeting. He came out with one once about a fox doing something, and not a single person in the room could work out what it actually meant. I'd love to remember what it was. The fox did something, everyone was just like, no, gone. But yeah, just to get people just to think outside of their role and their job. It's like you said, if a finance person is looking at financial numbers, they're not necessarily looking at the story that's caused that or what that means. And yeah, you just need to think wider. And local government as well, it's very siloed. So they're looking at the housing data, but actually the housing data could be impacted by this services data and that services data that's then driving that through. But if you're working in a silo and in a data silo, you might not have access to that information, so you don't know what's actually causing that to happen. So you're making decisions on how the service needs to move forwards without actually fully understanding what the problems are that's driving the service as it is in the first place.
This is it.
And that's why they bring someone like you in to bring the data together. Little plug for you there. Little plug. Sponsored plug.
Hang on. Say that again. Just repeat that phrase.
Brought to you by Ardema Solutions Limited.
Don't sing. Call me. They want strictly.
Oh dear. We've lost it this week.
I am the worst person to be doing things like that. I literally just go.
Yeah.
But never mind. Anyhow, but yeah, I agree. I think it's always that bigger picture, isn't it? It's looking at, okay, well, what does that mean? What's that actually telling me? And going back to that petition, it's like, what does that actually show? Does that yes, on the face of it, it's a really high number. But
Yeah.
what's it actually telling me from a wider perspective? What's it actually showing me? And I came to the conclusion, looking at it, going, yeah, okay, it keeps going up, keeps going up, keeps going up. But when you look at it and go, actually, it's only probably the same people that were pissed off with Labour before the general election and
Yeah.
before all these decisions, regardless of what you think of them. And I am physically homeless, for the record, so I don't really. They're all a bunch of.
Having said that, I saw a post yesterday that said Keir Starmer had signed it 456 times or something. So there might be one or two bots involved in this process to get the number up.
That'd be
But yeah,
funny.
but it is that,
He
isn't
said
it?
if he did, he probably didn't know what he was doing.
Yeah, but it was the perception of 2 million sounds a lot, but actually the 65, how many are there in the country? 65 million or whatever. It's not a huge amount of people who have signed it anyway, and also more people voted probably Reform than, I think more than 2 million voted for them. So you could literally just go, well, it's every Reform voter that signed it, or it's every Conservative voter that signed it. So you would expect that number to be in the millions.
I think, isn't it, when it goes over a certain threshold, they have to debate it in Parliament or something, isn't it?
I think they have to decide to debate it or something. They can choose to ignore it because anyone can set a random petition up and get some Russian bots to fill it in and stick some postcodes in that match. So, because I think the Brexit one got the undo Brexit one got 6.5 million signatures on it, and they ignored that one. So, but again, that just it's kind of almost like
it's also about the perception, isn't it? About the perception
yeah.
about democracy that actually, whoa, we're getting deep now. But it's a perception of democracy that actually my vote makes a damn bit of difference, and what I think makes a difference anyway. Because if you then create the biggest movement ever in history, go to Parliament, what they're going to do about it? Nothing.
Nothing.
Probably lock you up.
Nothing. But the Western world have definitely got it sorted with democracy and choice and everything like that, haven't we? We've played the blinder there.
You know what I mean? It's kind of like this perception of being able to have things within your control that actually make a difference. And I think that's not saying you don't give up, but it's that perception of what is happening and what you're able to control and what you're not able to control. And it's kind of like, and it's very relative to the conversation, isn't it? As well, it's like, well, I can only control what I can control, so I don't measure things that I can't control. But okay, but then you still need to maybe be aware of that. It doesn't necessarily, that could over a period of time, an outlier comes there and you go, bang, I can't control that, but I need to be aware of it to make a decision that I can control.
You can control that.
So it's all part of the bigger picture. Circle back, well, let's go and boil the ocean and grab some low-hanging fruit.
Absolutely, they're the best type of fruit, aren't they? Because I'm only 5'10", so I can reach them. Much shorter than people think.
See, I was going to say something really crude then about your tattoo. It's about low-hanging fruit, but I didn't.
Don't, because it was 1996, I think. I was trying to be a little bit rebellious.
Heady year of 1996.
Yeah, before everyone had them, before they were cool. So I'm going to go with that. I was a rebel. I wish I didn't have one, but sadly I do, and it's there forever. No, it's fine. I forget I've even got it now. Just sits there, being ignored.
Where do you expect it to go? What do you expect it to do? Your little performance every day. I'm bored of you now. You're not entertaining me anymore.
Not entertaining me. It was fun. It was fun for a year, but on which note, Richard, I think we'll pull this one to a close as we moving on swiftly. So,
off the topic of your tattoo.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I think data, bringing it back to actually what we talk about, data and perception of data, and we've talked about the kind of the image of data and everything like that. It's all good, but actually, what you do with it, how you interpret it, how you use it, what that tells you, is far more important to
and
me
then
that
the
just
technical deliverable. So this is going down that route
yeah,
again. But yes, it doesn't matter what platform you use, how clever it is, how intuitive it is. If you're not seeing what you need to see, or using it effectively to support your decision making, it's pointless.
yeah, absolutely. On which point we will call it a day, and I will see you in a couple of weeks, and I hope people call you for your services.
Actually, got my phone number down. We've got next time.
Yeah,
I've got my phone
there'll
number.
be a T-shirt next
You
time with your phone number on.
you showed your certificate of the week for being the only entrepreneur on the course. I should have got my phone number on going.
Next time,
I
I'll
won't.
send you a certificate, by the way, just so you've
Yeah,
got one. I know I ran out of time yesterday, but I will do.
I pretend you're busy.
Right. On that note,
Anyway,
I'm off. I'm
see
busy.
ya.
I'll speak to you soon. Cheers. Bye.